Today I want to talk to you about how I approach acting roles. The first thing I want to say is something I've said before in a couple of videos, and that is that the most important thing, in my opinion, is to simply find out what works for you. Now, some people are disciples of one approach, and there are many approaches to acting. Some people have no training and follow no methodology. And then there's probably, I suspect, like most people, but I'm just guessing, some sort of combination of the two, which is certainly what I am. And when I say find out what works for you, it doesn't matter what that is. You may find for one type of scene you can get to where you need to get to best using a methodology, and in another type of scene you might find that it just comes naturally. And I think every actor I've ever met has that mix. There's some things which they can get into very easily, and some things they really need to work out and plan and find a way to get to an emotion or a feeling or whatever they need to do, which doesn't come easily to them. And I suppose the obvious one, being a man, is that, when you're brought up that big boys don't cry, that a lot of us, getting to that teary emotional state can be quite challenging. I've got notes. Of course I've got notes. A lot here and a few here. I just want to check. I think I have a bit of a problem with making lists. If you look on my computer, you would find that I have lists in Notes, the Notes app. I have lists in the To-Do app, and I have lists in Word documents. I have lists everywhere. I've got to, seek help probably. And the other thing is, these things I'm going to talk about is that it's not comprehensive. These are just ideas I've had. And I'm sure I'm missing stuff. And also, when you get a job, you may not have the luxury of going through some of these things I'm going to talk about. I mean, the shortest time span I've had is receiving a phone call at 9 or 10 at night and being on a train at 6 a.m. the next morning to go to a job. So sometimes you get no time at all to prepare. And in those situations, you just need to rely on the director to point you in the right direction. And hopefully the other actors will help you as well if they've been on set for a while. So you just have to put yourself in other people's hands. Ideally, you'd like to come with, a character prepared and ready to go, and with lots of choices, and something you've talked about before with the director, so you're both on the same page. And ideally, you get all that sort of thing sorted out in advance, but things don't always go that way. Okay, let me put my glasses on, see what we've got. I guess it's obvious, but read the entire script, and more than once. I'll do that quite a few times, actually, because it not only helps you understand the story, but understand where your character fits in the story, but it also highlights to you things which may jar a little bit, and you need to, the sooner you get any of this sorted out, the better. So if something jars or doesn't feel right, or the dialogue doesn't feel right for your character, whatever it is you're thinking, it doesn't matter. There's no wrong questions. I would contact the director and say, this doesn't feel right. Can I change this line to this? Or why am I doing that? And get all these questions out there, because you're looking at, no matter how broad thinking you may be as an actor, you're looking at it through the lens of your character, because that's what you're really honing in on. And yes, you have to have an awareness of the overall thing, but the person who has a real awareness of the overall thing is the director. That's what they're honing in on, the big picture, making sure the story's told. And sometimes there are things as an actor that you think your character wouldn't do or shouldn't do, or doesn't feel right, or just feels a bit uncomfortable. However, that thing may be needed, may be an important cog in the director's overall vision of the film that you may not be aware of, or is not obvious to you. So you need to have these discussions and sort all that sort of thing out with the director, and in advance, ideally. And when you're reading through, make notes. What's going on here? Because I read scripts, and I'm sure everyone does, and you read parts and you think, well, I have absolutely no idea what's going on there. And that's fine. That's fine. Just ask questions. This sort of fundamental actor stuff is identify your objective. You may have an objective for the whole film, and you'll have an objective, well, you will have an objective for the whole film, or else your character will be very boring to play and to watch. So you have to identify that. And in every scene, you'll have a minor objective. I can't remember all the correct terminology for these things now, but a minor objective for that scene. But all of those minor objectives are kind of building blocks for your overall objective. So you need to identify those things, and again, I would discuss as much as possible, given time constraints, as I mentioned at the start. Sometimes you have no time, with the director, and make sure you're on the same page, because you could come up with ideas for your character which are fantastic and the director loves, and they may trigger ramifications which may disturb the story in a negative way, so you can't really do that. You have to find another path. Or they may disturb the story in a positive way, which the director embraces and tweaks other things, because this is such a great idea that they want to run with it. So again, get as much time talking about things with your director as possible. Because I'm a director as well, and I know that no matter how much you think about things, no matter how much you think you've got it all covered, other people are going to come in with views and ideas and things that you simply never thought of. So as much of that as you can get done before you get to filming is ideal. And a couple of other actory things, I guess. Obstacles. Identify obstacles like objectives. What do you want? Obstacles, what's in your way, what you have to overcome. So identifying those is just as important. Your obstacle might be the spy from the rival nation that is in your way to, saving the diplomat, or whatever it is. There'll always be an obstacle. And if there isn't, I'd be worried about that. And I would, again, talk to the director. That's going to be on repeat through all this for an actor, but it's important, because your responsibility is for the character, the director's for the whole film, so you want to be on the same page. And you want to raise things which don't feel right for you. And given circumstance, you need to understand, where you are, what the time period is, what the situation is, what happened just before the film started or just before your scene started, and how that influences your character. So understanding all of those things can only help. It's all tools in your toolbox, as they say. So getting on top of all that stuff really helps. And there's also research and backstory. Some people love to create a character biography, and they fill out all the details about their character, be it quirky traits, height, weight, all that kind of stuff, approach to topics that are raised in the film, their approach to friends and lovers and things like that. They create a backstory which gives them a kind of base to build their character on top of. So they build up this whole character with really detailed information about them. And other people don't. And as I said at the start, it's up to you what works for you. But I would say generally having some kind of biography about your character is a good thing. And the way I look at it is that if you get stuck in something, or in a scene or a sequence of scenes, or just in understanding what's going on, or understanding what you can bring to the scene, having something to fall back on and reference is really nice, because you might start going in one direction and it just doesn't feel quite right. And you could, if you've got notes of this biography, you could look back and go, this isn't, the reason it doesn't feel right is because I've strayed from the character I built. Now, you have to be a little bit careful there, because sometimes straying from the character you built is perfect for the story. And sometimes feeling uncomfortable as a character or as an actor is really, really riveting to watch. So just because it feels uncomfortable and not quite right doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. So you have to make those, calls as you go along. But it's good to have something in your back pocket. Again, it's the tools in the toolbox. Something to call on if you get stuck. Oh, just knocked one of my lights over. You know what a technical whiz I am. Oh, let's point it the right way for a start. Oh, shit. Oh, man. Just give me 2 seconds here while I fix everything. There we go. One day I'll have a place where I can have a nice little corner or something permanently set up, so I don't have to torment you with my technical inefficiencies. It's my polite way of saying that my, lack of technical prowess. As well as, doing your character biography and research, you can research the wider world, especially if you're playing something which is unfamiliar to you. If you're playing in some film about Julius Caesar, then, doing some research of the Roman world at the time would be enormously beneficial. Now, that doesn't mean you have to write essays or make copious notes, but even just watching a few documentaries about Julius Caesar or about Rome, or listening to podcasts, which I love to do, listen to history podcasts, all of that can help. And you should never, just like I mentioned when I talk about writing, you should never underestimate your mind. You can watch these things and it will plant seeds and ideas in the back of your mind that will come up later on. Whether it's a conscious thing or an unconscious thing, because you have that information in there, it can feed what you're doing without you realizing. But you've got to have that information. So, and I know I mentioned earlier that some people come in completely unprepared, not unprepared, but they go about things in a different way, so they not naturally inclined to do all that kind of research. But with things like this, I think you have to. Such a specific time frame, such a specific outlook on the world, specific views on politics and gender, things like slavery and how you dress and etiquette and customs. I think you have to research when you're doing things like, for example, a film about Julius Caesar, or else it's just going to look totally out of place. And then there's your own preparation, own physical preparation. You may need to get, obvious examples would be, like Hugh Jackman in the Wolverine films. He obviously got himself into absolutely fantastic shape to play that role, especially in the last one, which I think is by far the best one, the Logan, because it's more of it's a family story really, which just happens to be Wolverine's family. That's the way I look at it anyway. He's in super shape, appropriate for the role, and Christian Bale in The Machinist. That was scary, how much weight he lost. So, and obviously, don't do any of this without medical advice and supervision. So, you need to make a choice about how you approach it physically. And that may mean you need to acquire some skills like become a tennis player or ride a horse or whatever it is. Especially if you've already written that on your CV and someone cast you because you can ride a horse or play tennis. You need to quickly sort that out. So that's something to consider. Your voice, how you want to sound. And that's particularly appropriate if you're playing a historical character, because you want to sound like them. Lots of films require accents. Lots of films require American accents because I guess that's where they sell the most films. So, it's still quite prevalent. I just preferred playing in my own accent, but I have done things with a little bit with a German accent, Romanian. Oh no, was that a little bit of Romanian actually. Yeah, you might need to learn another language or pieces of another language. I've done a little bit of Latin, a little bit of Romanian, a little bit of French, I think the Latin one was probably the one I felt most comfortable with. But, you know, just do what you do. So So it's about, and sometimes to get your voice to a particular place, you'll need to do some training. Say if you want to do it all in a higher pitch or a lower pitch or something like that, or you need to flip between them, you may need a vocal coach to help you get there. Okay. There is also in acting something we use called emotional recall and sensory recall. That's where you remember similar situations you were in, or similar feelings you had, or similar experiences you've had that are similar, or maybe even the same as what's happening in the film. And you use that to inform your performance. Not everyone does this. You can do something similar by just imagining those situations and getting that feeling in your body to be able to play that kind of scene. So everyone's different again, and there is some word of warning about using your own emotional experiences, is that it could be a little traumatic, or could be very traumatic, to recall those experiences again, with the aim of using them to help you in your scene, but you don't want to trigger any negative responses, or trigger depression, or trigger going down a dark path because you've brought these things up again. So you need to be very careful with that. What else? Rehearsing. Rehearsing is always good. I had a video a few weeks ago about rehearsing, and I think it's a good thing. I don't think you should go 100%. I mean, this is my personal view. 100% in rehearsing. I think you should, again, all this stuff is time restricted. How much time do you have to do it? But if you have time to just sit and have a read through, some people hate read throughs and think they're a waste of time, and sometimes they feel that way, to be honest with you. But it's nice just to get the actors together and to meet the other actors and spend a little time and read the script, and just in a more relaxed, general kind of way. And if you've got something to bring, you can bring it to your reading. But I like it as a kind of warm up, and then you can but I keep slipping into director mindset. As an actor, I would definitely come to, even if it's just a simple, no pressure rehearsed reading, I would come with as much as I can. Not necessarily from giving 100% performance, but questions, ideas, seeking relationships. What are the relationships? Just come with as many questions and as much information as you've gleaned to any rehearsal. And then you can ask those questions and thrash it out with the director and the other characters, and that all helps you, and it helps them as well. So You know, there's no such thing as a bad question or a stupid question in my book. So yeah, and being able to get the scenes up on their feet is an expression we use, but which just means to practice the scene. There's something about adding movement to text that A in a gun. I don't know how that came up. A is it throws you. It throws you. That's why they always say you should learn your lines while you're doing something else. The washing up or ironing or weeding the garden or whatever it is. Because adding an action will throw you and make you realize that you don't know your lines as well as you think you do. So it's good. You need, the lines are so embedded in you that you can be doing anything and you're fine. But also adding an action just gives you, I think it gives you something. I think the reason actors love actions are that it kind of, I don't know how to explain this, it kind of takes your focus away from just being 100% on thinking about your lines. I guess it's the same as the washing up thing. If you have something to do in a scene, like, I don't know, you're washing your car while you're having this dialogue, then it feels more natural than just standing there delivering lines back and forward. And B, it takes your mind off the lines. Because when you're focused on the lines and thinking about the lines, which you shouldn't be, it looks like crap. It's the only way I can explain it. And you get lost in that instead of playing the scene. I hope I haven't confused you there. Yeah. And yeah, getting the rehearsing the scenes allows you to see what's not working for your character and how the interaction with your character and other actors is going. So it's really good, because sometimes you'll get up and do things and it just doesn't feel right at all. Or so you realize that something needs to change. You need to maybe tweak the dialogue, or maybe tweak the action, or maybe have a complete rethink because it just doesn't work. And the director should be on top of that, but if they aren't, again, say something, ask questions. Rehearsals are brilliant for that, because as much as you can do beforehand, the smoother shooting potentially will go. You've got to be able to take direction. I guess that's an obvious thing as an actor. Not everyone's great at that. I've witnessed that on films with my fellow actors, and I've witnessed that directing myself, that some people are great, some people not so much. So always be the actor that can be directed. So stay loose, stay flexible. You never know how, you may at home, plan out how the scene's going to go in your mind and think that's great, I'm all over that. But when you get on set, something's changed, or the actor opposite you haven't worked with, had a chance to rehearse with or anything, is playing it completely different to when you're rehearsing by yourself at home, and it just throws you completely. I mean, that can be a good thing, don't get me wrong, but if you're locked into one way of doing it, you're going to be really stuck and in trouble. But if you're not locked into one way of doing it, you're keeping loose and open and willing to receive, then even if they do it completely different to what you expected, you're open to it and you can take it on and respond. So stay loose, stay loose. Be on top of it, have ideas, but don't lock into anything. When you get on, even when you're on set and filming the scenes, you know, it's not uncommon, and I've done this myself as a director, it's not uncommon to hear, that was great, let's try something else. And the director may leave it to you to try something else, or they may suggest something else, and you've got to be able to come up with something, which leads into improvisation. Sometimes it's not working at all, but we need to have this scene to get from this point in the story to this point. So, you know, let's improvise something, let's try things. So you really have to be open. I think it's maybe the most important thing, being open, because being open is tightly connected with being honest. So I strongly encourage everyone to be as open and honest and adaptable and changeable, because you never know what's going to happen. And even if you rehearsed with a character, another actor, by the time you get to filming, they may not be on the film anymore. It might be someone completely different. So you've got to be able to roll with the punches. And as I've said many times, talk to your director beforehand, because if you buy into what the director's trying to do, then it's going to make your life and their life a lot easier, because you're both on the same path. That doesn't mean you'll disagree about things along the way, but if you're bought into their overall vision, then it's going to be easier for you to adapt and change, because you know that the path they're on. But yeah, stay open and listen. Oh, it's the golden rule of acting, I think, listening. Because especially when you start out, you just want to get your lines out. You're in your head and all of these things that when you start, you look back on, you think, oh my God, that's terrible. And every actor has this. So you're so worried about your lines, getting them out, that you're not really listening to your partner. And that's terrible, because if you want to make a scene feel natural, believable, and engaging and interesting, you've got to listen. Because if you're listening, it may change what you say. So, you know, if you've delivered a line in such a way that it evokes a response you weren't expecting from your scene partner, that takes you slightly off track, but in an interesting way, you want to be able to run with that and just follow on. Because you're listening, you're engaged. But if the track is heading down here, but you just stick with your lines, saying in the way that you practiced at home, you're not listening to the other person, you're going down this path. That's not going to be good to watch. And it's not going to be good for, your scene partner, the director, anybody, believe me. So listen. And when you listen and things come out naturally during scenes, this is the best stuff. Because as I mentioned earlier, when the actor has that unexpected response, because they weren't expecting what was coming from the other side, and the same thing happens when you respond to that, to the other actor, then you've got two actors who are kind of out there, not really sure where things are taking them, but committed to doing that, and it just takes you to such an interesting place. So watchable that that's the sort of stuff that really engages an audience. So listen and be brave and be loose and be open. Yeah, what else have I written here? That's about it. I've probably forgotten a gazillion things. I've no doubt about that. But I just wanted to give you a flavour of some of the things I do. And from a line learning technical viewpoint, I'm still old school. I love a bit of paper. I don't know what it is. It's almost like a security blanket, I think. And if I get a role and I am in significant amount of scenes, I will print out each of those scenes and as separate, and I have the little chunks of each scene and learn them in order usually, irrespective of shooting order. I learn them in character order so that I get the feeling of the flow. And I do the old way of just reading the lines out loud, and then I do, I repeat them, again and again, and I add a few lines each day is my approach. And then I will go through and do the thing where you cover the other characters' lines and read my lines and go through like that. And then I will use an app, one of the free apps. I can't remember what the one I use now is called, but you can just upload your script and you can assign voices to the other characters, so you can, and set a pace and all that sort of thing. And it's like you're working the scene. It's not to lock anything in. It's just to get a feel for cues and where you fit in the dialogue, in the scene, in the order of people speaking. But again, I keep it loose because, if I do all that, you turn up and there's changes to the script, you don't want to be too locked in. So, because changes could completely change everything. And you might have the time you've got to sit in makeup to learn the changes. So, don't keep free and open and loose for as long as you can. Ideally, always. So that's the way I go through it. If you get a chance to run lines with your scene partners, that's great. But if not, as is often the case, especially in low budget indie films, you just got to turn up. You turn up day one and you're into it. So, I think that's what I do. I also like to find some music which suits the character, and I might have that playing in the background when I'm learning lines or reading the script, because that helps you. I don't know, it's hard to put into words, but it just gives you a feeling about the character. What else? Things like costume, they can affect, I think they definitely do affect the character. What you're wearing, how you're appearing. So just me looking like this, opposed to me clean shaven, changes how I look and how you perceive me very, very differently. Clothes you're wearing, your costume, your shoes. Do things fit well on you? Things tight? You wear loose clothing? There's a gazillion things around costume and makeup and hair that influences you. You feel it physically change you. So going to, if you have that luxury of being on a production with a significant budget, and you can go to costume and hair and makeup tests and all those things before, that's great because you get a sense of that feeling, which helps. Everything helps. Everything you can absorb into you about your role helps. I'm sure there's plenty of things that I should have mentioned, but for now that's all I can think of. So thanks for watching. It'd be great if you could like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. And ask questions. I'd love to hear your questions. And if you'd like to support me further, you can buy me a coffee. There's a link in the description below. I hope to see you on the next one.